Hi everyone, welcome to our weekly live on delving into chapters of my book, Become a Super Salesforce Consultant. Unfortunately, I haven't got Shellen here this week. She's just had an issue that's come up, so it's just me. But we're delving into chapter P, which is all about project tools. And I've just kicked off my consultancy skills course today, and so we were talking about this topic, so it's very timely and at the front of my mind. And we're talking about how do you manage stakeholders. We started the conversation around risk. So we looked at our risk mitigation strategy today for Salesforce projects and where things can go wrong. And quite often some of the challenges that we can get on projects is that we don't get information and things back from stakeholders in time, which means that projects get delayed or the build gets delayed and it can go offline. And one of the solutions to that, to mitigate it, is to make sure that you've got really good project management tools and systems. It's not just one tool necessarily you need. Ideally, these things will integrate, so I'll come on to that. But if you don't get these different tools in place, what can happen is that you will, and you'll experience this yourself, as you're working together as part of a pop-up team, is that you'll have emails bouncing back between people, emails that might have files attached, they might have a deadline in them, but your emails build up every day and all of a sudden you've forgotten what you've got to do by which time and there's no coordination on it. And also files are being shared in those different ways. You might not be meeting compliance requirements because you don't necessarily want to share confidential data, or certainly not any contact information if there's any data imports that are happening in emails. So things can get lost in emails. People can forget those deadlines. They might not be clear what's expected of them when. And so what you end up is a very messy sort of communication, project management non-solution, quite frankly, because nobody knows really what's happening when or why, and there's no accountability put into place. So that's why we have amazing project management tools and systems that get created. But what you've got to do is get everybody on board with using one and making sure that they're trained on it, they know what's expected of them, they make sure they get the notifications set up, and that you as a team are all working towards the same agenda. Now, I went out to Salesforce Ohana a while back and asked people what their favorite tools were. So I share a lot of those in the book and on the consultancy skills course about different tools you can have. But typically there were 5 different tools that you'll kind of need. And ideally these would be integrated, as I mentioned, but it's not always the case. Now, a project management tool is great, particularly if you're allocating tasks to different people. With that, you might have a project management tool that gives people tasks that they need to do, like they need to get email templates back to you or finalize what reporting requirements they need. So there's an element of those things that you might put in a project management tool. But also a project management tool could be about logging time against a project, how much time you spend. Specifically, if you're working as a consultant where you're billing on time and money, you might need that tool that's going to log all the hours that you're doing on the project so you can see where you are against your budget. And that's very normal for agile project management, DSDM methodology, where everything is about being on time and budget. You need to know that you've got a certain number of hours and that you know where you are, but the requirements are flexible within that. You're actually all focused around the time and the budget. So you want a project management tool potentially that is allowing everybody who's working on the project to log their time. So you can see where you are on a budget at any point in time. You will need a tool where you are documenting all the requirements, all the functional requirements and the technical solutions. So there's tools such as Jira, for example, that are great at that. You can amend other systems to do that for you. We used to use Experience Cloud and use a custom object for requirements for our consultancy. So there's different ways of doing that. There's no right or wrong way, but what you want to have is it accessible and used by everybody on the team. So you'll want a tool to log time, to log all your user requirements. It could be similar or the same. When I did my research with the Salesforce Ohana, it was pretty obvious actually and evident that quite often there was an internal project management tool for the Salesforce team working, and then there was a separate client-facing tool, which was quite often all the requirements and then signing off the requirements, and where communication would also happen for asking for further detail about requirements. So that leads me on to the next tool, which is a communication tool. So that communication tool could be Confluence, for example, that links into Jira, or it could be Slack that's integrated into Salesforce. So there's different communication tools that link into these different products that allow communication back and forth around a specific requirement. And that is really useful because everything is tracked. Again, it's not in emails, but it's related to a specific requirement that you're building on. So you want that communication tool where it's clear, where it's linked back to things, and everybody can be on the same page with it. And you can set expectations with your team or client about how quickly you would like them to respond to things, so you can keep things moving. So comms tool is really important. As I mentioned before, file sharing is important, that you have a safe space to share files and communicate on files. If this is any data or specifically contact data that you are supporting an import, ideally that should never leave the folders of your client that you're working with. They should retain that data, and you should have access to that to then work off their systems to do any data transfer or import to make sure that you're compliant. But you should have a shared folder system for your filing, which ideally would again integrate with some of these other solutions. And then the final thing is a process mapping software. So you're mapping your processes which link to the requirements. And so common ones in the ecosystem is Miro or Lucidchart. There's Glyphy, there's Visio. You know, there's no right or wrong. Everybody's using different things. And I think it's about really finding tools that work for you, that you feel comfortable with, that, again, you can train your clients to adapt. I think when I was doing process mapping, though, what was quite important for me is if I was creating process maps for a client as a consultant, I would want them to own them afterwards and to be able to edit them and iterate them. So ideally, you want a solution, a platform where they can then take ownership of those process maps. Otherwise, they're going to have to redraw them out and edit them, draw them out from scratch again, if they're then updating any training materials or anything else. So you ideally want a tool, a solution that they can buy into or access and continue to iterate those process maps as the solution evolves, because Salesforce never stands still, let's face it. So that's really my recap around project tools today. We dig a lot more into this on our consultancy skills course and go into the different scenarios and best practice. I do cover this in the book. It's really about setting yourself up for success, being that super Salesforce consultant, putting everything in place so it looks really professional, that stakeholders know what's expected of them, when it's expected, that you've got a way of communicating, that everything is compliant. That's what best practice looks like. So I hope that's been useful for you today to think about how that might all work, what tools you could potentially use, and how you could get that into place. If you want to learn more, you're welcome to buy the book. The link is in the comments. And if you'd like any more teaching or support, then there's also my consultancy skills course, which I'll also share the link on as well. So thanks for listening today. I hope that's been useful, and I will see you next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.